Welcome back to CMB Connect. I'm your host, Val Buresch. My guest today is Rhiannon Bolen, a certified mortgage banker. She is a powerhouse in the industry. Rhiannon is the Senior Vice President and National Sales Director at GridBase, and formerly she held leadership roles at companies like CoreLogic, ICE Mortgage Technology, and Arch MI. She also founded the Texas Women Mortgage Bankers Group, and Rhiannon currently serves as the 2025-26 MORPAC Associate Vice Chair. Rhiannon, it's so fun to have you on the CMB Connect. Welcome.
Thanks, Val. I appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Before we start looking at your career, I wanted you to talk a little bit about your current role. You joined GridBase about a year ago. Can you tell us what GridBase actually is, what they do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined GridBase about a year ago. Effectively, we are a tech startup, so we're a technology solution. And my role when I joined was to kind of help lead the strategic sales initiative to take us kind of into the next phase of the growth of our product. And basically what we're attempting to solve for is the interaction between lenders and the title agents that they work with. So obviously, every loan that gets closed in the industry has to go through title, and the interaction between a lender and their title agents has historically been, and still to this day is still pretty manual. Most of it's done via email, most of it outside of a system of record. And if you think about the way that we operate, lenders, are inside some system, operational system like a point of sale or LOS. And on the other side of the equation, title agents also operate inside of their operating system called a title production system. And so there's these two platforms that are supposed to help manufacture the workflow between lender and title, but everything that's done kind of remains inside of those two systems. And if you have to get to a place of collaborating, much of that is done outside of those two systems of record. So our solution is a technology middleware. And basically what we do is we connect those two systems so that a lender and their title partners can get completely out of email. It's an integration that passes the data and the documents and notes and statuses and alerts and different things back and forth between a lender system of record and a title agent's system of record. We're really trying to solve for what I actually didn't even know until I got to GridBase was a highly inefficient workflow still to this day, even with all of the technology that we're seeing now in our industry that's, kind of starting to catch up. That piece of the manufacturing process is still very manual, very antiquated. And so we're effectively trying to solve for that. A little bit of a paradigm shift from what everybody's used to doing, but that's what we're trying to do.
That's awesome. Let me see if I understand it correctly. So you're like the glue. You're not necessarily doing title research, title recording, but you are the bridge, as you said, the glue between systems in order to make that transfer of information more efficient between the lender and the title company.
Yeah, I sometimes call it the invisible connector, but that's essentially what it is. We're not doing the workflow. We're not handling the workflow. From the time, basically what our technology does is from the time the order itself gets placed for title, and then, through that eventual workflow, there's a lot of back and forth that takes place. And so our integration sort of sits in the middle there. And it connects those two systems so that it could be done, so it just represents a much more secure process. That process today is ripe for fraud because you're having to exit your system and work inside of email, and there's documents get attached and sent back and forth. So what we're trying to do is kind of keep that all self-contained.
And who are your clients? Are the title companies your clients, or the lenders, or both?
Both. Yeah, it's a bit of both. Before I got to GridBase, our strategy was really around working with title agents. And so many of our clients were the title agents that we had an integration built to their title production systems. And that's just because that was kind of the easiest path. And then we built an integration to Encompass, which was our
Mhm.
first LOS. And when I came to GridBase, my kind of number one objective was to interact with the lending community because that's where a lot of my network is, and just kind of talk through the opportunity to work with lenders. And lenders, as you can imagine, depending on their business model, um, they could be working with a handful of title agents if they do a lot of consumer direct or retention business, or they could be working with hundreds or thousands of title agents if they are more purchase driven and a retail type of business model. So my job was and is to try to communicate the opportunity to lenders to be able to work with all of their title partners, irrespective of the business model, whether it's more consumer direct or in refi driven or purchase and retail driven, to kind of have a consistent workflow, right? And so they can work inside of their system and they can interact with all their title agents, no matter how they do business. So it's really both. And hopefully, what we do is we create just a better way to collaborate, just and more efficiently and more secure.
Mhm.
So, we tackle both sides.
I can see that, and it's a very exciting opportunity, and I would love to
It's
learn
different.
more. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
different.
yeah. Well, but let's go back to the beginning of your career, because it's
Sure.
always interesting to me, and especially I went to GridBase's website in preparation for our conversation today, and I saw very fun about
Yes.
us, the
Love our
team.
kid pics.
Yes, yes. And so you had a little picture of you as a
Yeah.
little girl and or a
Yes.
little boy, all of your colleagues there. And then we see your picture now as a grown up. So I was wondering when I looked at your pictures as a little girl, what drew you to the mortgage banking as a career? Did you have a mentor? Who told you that mortgage banking is a good profession or good career opportunity?
So I'm like a lot of others in the industry in that I'm a child of mortgage. So my mom was in the mortgage industry for her whole career. She retired a couple years back. So she spent all of her career really in mortgage banking and working, in various different types of roles. So early on, I was a small business owner before I got into the real estate finance space and ended up, winding down the business and, effectively needing to find a job. And so I was very young at the time, young entrepreneur. And my mom was in the industry and, she had a lot of friends and a big network and she
Hmm.
was able to identify an opportunity for me, and I really literally got in at the ground floor. I was a receptionist, and then that turned into some more of an operational role in nature, where I was doing, kind of processing functions and coordinating, and then that just kind of grew and took me into, where I've been for the better part of my career, which is in this B2B sales leadership type of role. So I've kind of grown up in the industry. To be honest, I've been in the industry for about 25 years. And I've spent most of that in outside business to business, some sort of a sales or sales leadership, strategic sales type of role. And in various parts. So I've spent time on the credit risk side, on the capital market side, technology. So I've had the opportunity to spend time in various parts of the industry, which I think is actually behooved me, because I get to know the industry quite a bit. And so that's what landed me where I am today. So
And with 25 years of experience and so many different parts of the industry, you have seen it all. You have seen 2008, 2022 of it. How did you navigate all these changes? Sometimes there is so much uncertainty and upheaval, especially with the great financial crisis in the 2000s. Was that difficult to navigate at that time?
Well, I mean, I think much like probably everybody else, we all just kinda held on for dear life depending on, what was going on at the time.
Yeah.
Being around for so long, I think that the only thing that's consistent in our industry is that it changes consistently. I always kinda joke that it takes just a little special kinda crazy to be doing what we're doing because it's just this roller coaster ride of this up and down thing. I don't know that, I would say that I, uh had any great success navigating any of these things. I think it's just more about you find yourself and I myself have uh been involved in acquisitions and closing and the closing down of companies while I was there and selling off of the company and so I've been involved in a lot of those different things
Hmm.
throughout my career. And I think all that you really can do is just uh you just continue to work hard and prove that you can bring value to an organization in some way. Leverage your skill set and for me, just do what I do the best way that I can, which is kind of what I've always done. I do leverage the network I've built over the years a lot, because I know a lot of really smart people that have built incredible careers, all of which we've all kind of joined arms and been through this roller coaster ride together, right? So there's a lot of, I have a lot of friends in this industry, a lot of, colleagues that, I lean on for advice throughout, these kind of challenging times and vice versa. And so, that piece of it's been really invaluable over my career is just this network of amazing, individuals that I've gotten to know. Um, all of us are just, trying to do the best we can do to put as many people in homes as we can, and that's what it's all about.
Is this why you became a CMB? To join another network and to get closer to many more mortgage professionals?
Partly. I think that having a broad knowledge of the holistic mortgage industry, not just the pieces and the parts that maybe you are involved with or maybe where you've built your career, but kind of understanding how it all holistically works together and how it's interconnected, I think is a really critical component of being able to be successful. And the CMB journey is, kind of the pinnacle for a lot of us that have gone down this path, and sort of the icing on the cake. Kind of getting, being educated about our industry. I've always, my whole career, I've always tried to continually invest in myself and my education. Um, I don't have a college degree, so for me, I started very young, and for me, it was really important that I'm going to put my stake in the ground in the mortgage industry, and so I needed to learn as much as I could and hone the skill set for the role that I was in at the time. And sometimes I had the good fortune of I worked for companies that invested in their employees and invested in certain skill sets to help you grow in your career. And at other points in time, I've just invested in myself. CMB has been part of that. So CMB is kind of, that I think for me, for my career path and for my knowledge, was part of the reason why it was so important that I kind of eventually take that journey. It took me a while to get there, but I got there eventually.
That's why we call it a journey.
That's right.
Yes, it's during that process, I think, that we learn a lot about the industry, about ourselves, even how we learn, how we connect with other people. So it's a great experience. Thanks for sharing that. So I wanted also to ask you about something that you built. I didn't know that you were an entrepreneur in the beginning of your career, but I think you have preserved that entrepreneurial spirit. It seems throughout your engagements and just in general. And you founded the Texas Women Mortgage Bankers Group, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So take us back to that moment when you saw that something is missing and that you decided that this organization needed to exist. So, was that a gap that you saw, or was that something else?
Yeah, I mean, yes, to a certain extent, yes, that there was, there was a gap that I saw. We started the Texas Women Mortgage Bankers in 2019,
Mm,
and there was, at the time, you had Empower with the MBA that was kind of really starting to take off and grow, and I had the opportunity early on to go to one of those first meetings, not the first one, but one of the first meetings that Empower had prior to 2019. And so you kind of saw a little bit of the evolution of the opportunities that existed when women can get together and help each other and help support one another. And Empower sort of really brought that to light. So for me, when I went to those first meetings, I was kind of like, huh, this is, I've always been passionate, being from, like I mentioned, child of mortgage, and the daughter of a female executive in the mortgage industry. Growing up, seeing some of the challenges that she had, back when she started, and
mhm,
through her career even. Um, so, Empower kind of was an inspiration for that, because they approach things with, like, this is there are some gaps that exist here. It's statistically out there that there's gaps in pay and gaps in opportunity. When we hatched the idea for the Texas Women Mortgage Bankers, I've been on the Texas Mortgage Bankers board and involved with the TMBA for like forever. And I'm really passionate about it. We're an awesome state MBA. We're one of the largest, if not the largest MBA in the country. And so we had a little bit of leverage there, right? Because of our size. And at the time in 2019, Paulina McGrath was the TMBA president. Now, TMBA I might get my numbers off here, but TMBA in its 107-year history, 107 years, has had 6 women presidents
oh, wow.
only. And so at the time, there happened to be a woman president, and she's a friend of mine, and I, went to her and I said, "Hey, there's this thing that's going on over here, and I think, we have enough clout that we
Mhm.
could maybe do our own thing." And so she basically said, "That's awesome, just go." And she just kind of let me run with it. And so I kind of took that inspiration from Empower, but we started the Texas Women Mortgage Bankers influenced by, but intentionally distinctly different than, Empower.
Mhm,
And the reason that is because we're a state association. And from the beginning, my kind of number one objective was that we could touch and interact with women in the state of Texas that maybe don't get to travel to Empower. They
mhm,
might be in a role that's more operational in nature. They may not even be able to travel to state conferences within their own state because they're office based. They really can't leave the office, whatever it might be because of their role. And so the TMBA has events throughout the state 3 times a year. And so
wonderful.
we
Yeah.
set out to piggyback on all 3 of those events in Dallas or in Austin or San Antonio or in Houston, and present the opportunity for women to join our events if we were in their area. And so they couldn't pay for or come to a conference for 3 days, but they could take 3 hours out of their day and come join us for this particular event. And so we set it out to be a distinctly different event, but part of the greater event of one of the Texas Mortgage Bankers events, separate registration. And our goal for starting this thing was, everyone knew the gaps existed. We all knew it. It gets talked about a lot. What we wanted to do was maybe not focus specifically on what the gaps were, but more on how we could close them. So it was more about, okay, how do we work together? How do we network to grow our career? How do we get better educated? How do we advocate for ourselves? How do we tackle challenging situations? how do we balance our work and our life with our family obligations, which, most of the time, if you have a family, a woman oftentimes will take, a broader role or a bigger role in that scenario, but they also work full time, right? Um, so just for us, it was just really important that we could touch, women maybe that couldn't go to the bigger conferences or travel or go to those things, but also what we could do by being together in a room and progress, sort of whatever our key objectives were for our lives and our career.
It's really inspiring, very inspiring. And
It's been amazing. It's really been, yeah. I mean, it's I have to say, probably one of outside of my CMB journey, one of my most proudest achievements in my career.
are you still involved with the Texas mortgage bankers?
Oh,
Women
absolutely.
mortgage
Yeah.
bankers, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
And
Actually, we started out in 2019 officially. I
yeah,
think there was 45 people at our first event, and we now have over 550 members that
wow.
participate in our events.
Yeah.
So the growth has been incredible.
So it has expanded in terms of reach. So you have now over about 500 members. What else has evolved, or what else is different between what you started and what is now?
You know, I think it's the thing that we have evolved to is because, we have 3 events a year. That's a lot, and we always try to tackle some topic that's different at each one, and we always wanna provide the opportunity for our participants to engage in a meaningful way. So when we set out, we've kinda settled into a little bit of the way that we frame our events, and, that has evolved since we first started because we actually started
I
in
see. Mm.
2019, and then we went into COVID. And so that was a real challenge because when you're trying to kick off, a new networking group or whatever you wanna call it, um, and we had to move virtual within the first year of launching. So we had to figure out, okay, what are we gonna do to kinda keep the momentum going, but we're all in a virtual world. So we went virtual for a little while, and then we came back and for lack of a better way, we sorta had to reestablish ourselves. And so when we did that, we started to think about how we wanted to, engage everyone to meaningfully connect with one another. And so we've gotten into a place where we identify topics that are important or timely. And we have a portion of all of our events that we have some, maybe it's a speaker or panel or some subject matter expert that speaks to the group. But then we have like the what we do our surveys, the most popular thing that everyone loves is the second half of all of our events where we actually talk to each other. We
Mm,
might interact directly with the speaker, and we might kind of back and forth, questions and answers and shared experiences and advice and whatever it might be, or we might interact at the tables that we're sitting at where we have actual mentors that are sitting at the table and they engage with the participants and we actually have conversations. And I'll tell you, it's evolved into this really special place where we've created this space for being vulnerable, and we have had, I mean, laughter and tears and people sharing and people getting, finding mentors in the moment and then carrying on and then, eventual success stories of people taking what they've learned or the advice they got from one of our events into something else that made them, more successful in their career, or they got a promotion, or they embarked on a different journey that they didn't have maybe the um the guts to do before they came to one of our events or something. So a lot of that has been pretty incredible. We've had some learnings along the way. We've made some mistakes and we had to pivot and we've done it. And so we always just kind of try to approach it with humility of what could we have done differently or better this last time, and let's not do that again, and or let's change it this way because we think this would get people to engage more. But it's been very rewarding. So it's, I really, I love this group. It's just a true passion project of mine. It's sort of my
mhm.
baby, and it's been great.
Really, really wonderful and beautiful. And I would love to come to one of your meetings.
You should.
This
You
sounds
should.
wonderful.
It'd be
Yeah.
great.
I love to travel, and especially to events that are a little bit like that, like what you're
Yeah.
describing. This is
Yeah.
very wholesome.
It's kind of amazing when you give people the space like that to actually have a real discussion and just
Yeah,
be genuine, what can happen, and that's what we try to do.
that's amazing. So I've known you, Rhiannon, since the CMB Society. And when I was a chair and serving on the leadership team, you were chairing our MORPAC, co-chairing our MORPAC and MA committees. And I know you also as this fierce, very much a big, fierce advocate for the mortgage banking industry.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
wanted to move in this topic. One thing that I have mentioned to you is that I always thought that advocacy is the same as lobbying, but you began to tell me that this is not the case. Can you help me have that story straight? What is advocacy? What is lobbying? How are they different? They're the same, or they're never
Yeah.
the same?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, I also love, I love this industry, and I think what we do is, it's such a critical component of trying to get, more people into homes. I mean, there's so many statistics around the criticality of when people own a home, what that creates, and from an asset standpoint from them, and what it does for a family and community, and just that's it's we're all in this industry because of that, right? And for purposes of us being able to continue that mission and in putting people in homes, um, you know there's we're we are a very regulated industry, as everybody knows, and there's a number every time Congress is in session. There's inevitably some kind of piece of legislation that comes up on the docket that potentially could positively or negatively affect what we're trying to do. And so if we don't advocate for ourselves and what we know is right, and what we know will enable us to be successful in continuing to put more people in homes, then we're not doing our clients a service or nor ourselves, right? And oftentimes there's legislation that comes up that is well intentioned, but maybe would have repercussions that would affect the end result, of what we're trying to achieve. And so, I've been involved with advocacy and kind of, government affairs, let's say, even before I did the Texas Women Mortgage Bankers. So at the state level with TMBA, I spent the better part of I think 5 years being the PAC chair, as well as our industry relations. Spent time doing our industry relations and ran a couple of our state level. We had advocacy days as well. So I've been doing that a long time. And then, more recently gotten involved at the federal level with the MBA, and, doing more PAC. And so all of that to say, it's because I believe that's really critical to our success to achieve, putting more people in homes. And there is a distinct difference. Um, Advocacy really is about the education, the awareness, about specific issues, in particular issues that are going to directly affect consumers that buy homes. And I think it's incumbent upon us that participate in the mortgage industry to be aware of and educate ourselves on whatever's coming at us, whatever legislative issues. It could be new bills, it could be changes to old, bills that were put into so for us, being educated on that is really what advocacy is about. We've got at the federal level with the NBA, we have you've got MA that you can participate in that kind of helps you become aware of what those issues are and what's being worked on by the NBA. And that's kind of what the advocacy piece of that is about. And then lobbying is kind of where the rubber meets the road, right? It's focused on directly influencing specific legislation, and that could be at the local, the state, or the federal level, meaning we're actively engaging with lawmakers
Yeah.
about specific issues that we learned about, that we advocate for, but now we're engaging with a lawmaker to say, hey, this is, maybe not the right path to go down, or this is awesome, but could we also incorporate this? And then the eventual result of that is what we hope is either to help um, block legislation that could negatively affect consumers, or help pass legislation that would be a positive benefit for consumers. Right? I mean, both are important. They both play a critical role in advancing our collective objectives of getting more people into homes.
Yeah, I've attended 2, 3 times the National Advocacy Conference, and I'm always amazed how interesting the discussions get. And also for me, as a immigrant to the US, I am always amazed at the process of democracy. You have
Hmm.
access to the legislation, you go to the Hill and you speak directly with the people who vote on those things. So I
Yeah,
think it's an awesome experience.
it's probably my favorite conference of the year to attend. We have pretty good turnout, but we could definitely have more people attending that conference, because it's definitely, yeah. I mean, you're really actively engaging with our lawmakers and with our representatives around specific things that could, for me, I'm on the business to business side, so I feel that um legislation that affects my clients, meaning mostly in the lending community, is going to directly affect me, because it affects my ability to do business with them if it's going to impact their business in some way. So I think it's just as important, even being in my space, to be involved in that stuff and help advocate for it.
Can you share a specific win of this process, maybe in Texas, maybe
Yeah.
nationally, where this type of grassroots advocacy really changed a legislator's mind, maybe moved the needle on a bill, maybe changed the housing policy completely, or anything you would
Yeah.
like to share with
Yeah, I mean,
us?
I can actually give you two. I can give you one at the state level and one at the federal level. Back in 2018 in Texas, it was previously written into the Texas state constitution that if you had done a cash out loan on a property in Texas, that it always had to be considered a cash out loan from forever forward, right? So from that moment forward, it always had to be considered a cash out loan.
Hmm.
And what that basically means is that potentially you have different guidelines around that. You could have higher rates, those sorts of things. And um, we felt it was really important that borrowers, consumers could refi into a rate and term refi to lower their rate, and lower their mortgage payment, without having, even if you had done a cash out loan in the past. We felt like you should be able to do a rate and term refi even if you had previously done a cash out loan on your property. And so in 2018, we advocated for and then lobbied for the eventual change to the Texas Constitution, and we successfully passed legislation that would allow homeowners to take advantage of those low rates and do a rate and term refi without having to call it a cash out loan. And then at the federal level, this is really recent. There's a lot of I'm sure a lot of us have heard about it, or seen it. Um, a recent piece of legislation that we just helped to successfully pass, that was signed into law, was the banning of the abusive trigger leads. And that one was really special because a lot of us were at the MBA's National Advocacy Conference that year to lobby around that issue. It was a huge talking point. I'm sure you remember. And eventually, the legislation passed. I think it crossed over into a new session, but it eventually passed. We picked it back up, and it eventually passed in the next session. And now that was signed into law by the president, and that goes into effect
In
in
March.
March of this year.
Yeah.
And it was a big win for our industry and for consumers. And basically now, our clients, our consumer clients, are protected from these abusive trigger leads that were happening. So, those that was recent, and that was a really big win for our industry.
I think those two examples are excellent. I didn't know about the cash out refinance initiative that you had to change the state
Constitution.
constitution. Yes,
Yep.
that was quite a
Yep.
win for you. And it made perfect sense. You cash out refinance, but after that, why be penalized forever?
Right.
Excellent. Yeah. And then
Mhm.
trigger leads, that should have been done even much, much earlier, but that's great. That's going to be a big win for consumers. I want to talk to you about habits, about some skills that you have developed, best practices in your practice, so to speak, both as a consultant, as a business to business solution provider, as well as advocacy. I know that, and you have mentioned it also, that people often underestimate the time that you spend preparing for a call or a meeting versus being on that call or in that meeting. I was wondering what your pregame looks like, whether you can share
Mhm.
some of your secret sauce with us.
Sure. So I mean, I mentioned, just kind of for me, the importance of investing in my skill set and my own growth and education in my career. I've been doing business to business or B2B sales since the dawn of time, it seems like sometimes. And it's a very I think B2B, is first off, it's a honed skill set for sure.
Mhm.
But it's very different than consumer facing because you're not selling to an individual that can make a decision like that. You're selling to an organization with many layers, with many decision makers, different buying styles. You've got divisions within that organization. There's different stakeholders that it could touch. It's very nuanced, and there is a very specific skill set that you can learn and that can be honed to, do this effectively. A lot of my focus throughout my career has been to build my reputation as a trusted individual with the network that I operate in. And I tend to kind of lean in more to a consultative style of engaging because I do honestly have a genuine desire to help support solutions that are solving a challenge in our industry. And so, as a result of that, much of my network that I have today has been built upon that trust. And I approach my interactions with kind of what I would call a genuine curiosity because I really want to understand what's happening inside of a business and where I might have an opportunity to support an initiative or resolve an issue that's inside of that business or not. And that's important too, because sometimes you may have something or work for a company that is needed, or it may be not needed at the time. And both of those have to be okay. And so there are ways to build your skill set around active listening, asking good questions that are relevant to whomever it is that you're speaking with and what their role is, learning how to navigate inside of an organization and being able to talk about different aspects of the business. That's We talked about this a little bit earlier. That's why CMB I think is so important because in going through that journey, um, you have to having a broad knowledge of the holistic nature of our business and being able to have a conversation around that and kind of relate different pieces to whomever you're speaking with that relate to different divisions inside of an organization. I think is really critical. And then you also have to know how to effectively negotiate, have a discussion around contracts. And a lot of B2B sales also heavily involves interdepartment cross-functional management, where you have to engage with internal stakeholders in the product organization or the development team or the business analysts or customer success or legal or procurement or whatever it might be inside of an organization depending on its size. And in my roles or in this type of a role, you're not only interacting with external stakeholders that are in different parts of an organization, you're interacting with internal stakeholders that if you have an opportunity to kind of see a deal come to fruition, you've got to kind of manage both sides, right? So it's the external management of that and the internal management of that. So when you ask about the preparation and what goes into that type of a skill set, is first off kind of the baseline of educating yourself around what that looks like, because you can build your skill set around that. But it's all what I talked about. It's, managing that sales cycle along the way, but with both on both sides, between the external component of it, which is the client, and the internal component of it, which is, getting everybody aligned so that you can get the deal over the finish line. That's a lot of what goes into these types of discussions in this type of role.
Also wonder if to what extent the lenders, for example, need to prepare as well for those meetings with technology solutions and providers.
A lot of it's incumbent upon you as the sales professional or the sales leader to come armed with the right types of questions to ask so that you could identify where or whether or if there is your solution is going to fulfill a need, whether it's now or in the future, and what that timeline looks like. And
Rhiannon, I can talk to you all day, and I definitely would love to come and visit you and get to in one of those
come on.
meetings. I would love to. I have one last question for you in our podcast. So let's imagine this scenario: a young mortgage professional, like maybe out of high school or out of college, comes to you and says, Rhiannon, I have $1,000. I have 10 hours to invest in a new skill. What would you say to that young person? What skill should they buy or learn right now, now that we are standing in and looking at 2026, in order to future-proof their career? You've been through it all. What's your advice?
This is a very easy question for me to answer, and it's probably not one that you potentially hear a lot, because I know, you've got everybody talks about AI, coding, all this stuff around
Yeah.
around technology that I think is the what everybody says you should hone your skill set on. But I'm going to go a completely different direction, and I will say a lot of the discussions with the folks or the people that I work with as a mentor center around effective communication.
Hmm.
And I think it is an art form. I think there's so much to be gained from learning how to engage with your superiors, with your colleagues and peers, with clients. I think there's so much to be gained from learning how to ask for and advocate for yourself, how to navigate challenging discussions, how to articulate your value. At the end of the day, we are a people business, and relationships and communication, I believe, is critical for what we do. So I think communicating effectively, while it may not be the obvious choice, I think it's a crucial part for creating success for yourself as a young professional. And this ultimately, I think, can take young professionals into leadership roles, and for them to see future growth in their career. That for me, communication and doing that effectively is a really important foundational part of a career for someone. So,
This is an excellent advice, and I totally agree with you. I think as people are leaning into the role of artificial intelligence in their day to day work, they will be craving more and more real connections with other human beings and
mhm,
real communication. And I
agree.
can't remember exactly the quote, but I think it went that the biggest illusion that people have is that communication happened. So that's the often people don't know how to communicate their idea and think the other person understood them, but that
Right.
person didn't.
Yep. Miscommunication can create chaos for sure.
Where they can get involved with you with more pack, where they can follow your work at GridBase, learn more about Texas Women MBA. If you can give us those links or idea how to stay in touch.
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn is, kind of the mechanism for how we communicate in the real estate finance business more often than not. So much of that is all, I post a lot and share around some of the things that we're doing with MorePack and MA for the MBA. Same thing with Texas Women Mortgage Bankers. So I think that, just connecting with me on LinkedIn, I'm totally open to interacting with anybody that has questions or wants to message me separately. just connect with me, and look at some of the things that I post, and you'll inevitably be able to connect with some of the stuff that I'm involved with. So
Good. I'll share your LinkedIn link in
that'd be
the
great.
show notes. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Rhiannon, thank you
All right,
very
Val.
much for your
Thank you.
service to the industry that you shared with us today and for joining us for this very honest and useful discussion today.
Thanks. I appreciate it, Val.
And thank you to all of our listeners. I'm Val Buresch, and this is CMB Connect. See you next time.